All right. Barbara, I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, good morning and hello, all my association friends. I'm greeting you to an exciting event that we hope is going to be a lot of fun. Kiko is proud to share a sneak peek at the soon-to-launch Association Marketplace, a new tool to breathe some fresh air into those venerable buyer's guides. Patterned after a farmer's market, the Association Marketplace will give vendors a comfortable place to show their shiny apples, juicy tomatoes, fresh peaches. Obviously, I mean their tools and systems to help association professionals. At the same time, though, association staff are not sitting and listening to sales pitches. You're walking up and down the aisles in a pattern that you choose, lingering where you want and chatting comfortably with the farmers, also known as our subject matter experts, behind these fabulous offerings before you dig into the list of features. The Association Marketplace will be open for your visits every month this year, as the spotlight rotates to shine on different sets of vendors. So keep a lunchtime available on the third Thursday each month. And as Sandra mentioned, we're recording the main room portions as we share, so we can share those as we work our way through the year. For this debut, we're shining the spotlight on learning management systems, and we're delighted to have as our MC, Jeff Cobb of Tagoras. I'll give Jeff a full intro in a moment, but let's start with some important info from Kiko's CTO, Lucas Chiaffi, to show us around the construction zone so we can visualize the future marketplace and find our way around today. Lucas.
Thank you so much for that intro. Thank you so much for that intro, Barbara. So here's a brief plan of what we've got. So in a lot of different parts of the world, they're experimenting with live selling. And we realized that the buyer's guide can be brought into the future with the integration of video. And I'll share my screen here. The concept is that you'd be able to go online if you're a vendor, and you'd be able to shop if you're someone who's in the market for an LMS or an AMC or financial services. That there'll be a separate page for it, but today we've embedded it right here. So here's a sneak peek at the Association Marketplace. It starts with news and an efficient way to stream a stream of news from all vendors in the association industry and the ability to filter them. Here are our lovely sponsors that are partners in putting this together for the association news stream. You also can integrate your Instagram, so you'd see a stream of all of everything the vendors are providing from Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and the ability to filter that out so you can be notified of the vendors that you're following. Again, this is just the early stage, and we're really interested in hearing your feedback after the event, but today's focus is on LMSs. So as we look at the marketplace button at the top, the concept is you've got some vendors here who are live on Zoom, and you could go to the map and see, maybe they're doing open office hours, maybe they're doing a quick recording or tutorial or some thought leadership, and you're able to just pop in and meet them on Zoom. So it's a virtual storefront, the ability to meet vendors live, shop online, click shop, and then you can see more about what they have to offer. These are all concepts that we're having a lot of fun with and exploring. We look forward to telling you more about them in the weeks and months ahead. If you are a solution provider, we look forward to helping you get on the marketplace. And the goal really is to lift all boats, let everyone get discovered of all the great things that they're providing for the association community. I'll turn it back over to Barbara.
That's fun. And I love a construction zone where I don't have to wear a hard hat. Yeah. Thanks, Lucas. I now want to give a warm welcome to Jeff Cobb. Jeff is a familiar face to many of us. He and Celisa Steele are Tagoras, with the team advising and educating the learning businesses and service providers in adult education and professional development. We know that today's session will not give you all the information you need to make an LMS purchase. So take note that Tagoras is hosting a leading learning session in early March to continue the conversation on LMS selection in the evolving learning landscape. Easy for me to say, right? You can visit Jeff in his room to get more details. So Jeff, we invite you to take the mic and get the conversation rolling as we hear from you, Tom, Mike, Jessica, and Phil.
Great. Thanks so much, Barbara. And thanks to Sandra for inviting me to the event here today. Just a little bit by way of my background and why it makes sense for me to even be here in the first place. I've been in this whole world of learning management systems for more than 20 years at this point. A lot of people don't know it, but before we had Tagoras, Celise and I had a company called iSoft that actually created one of the first learning management systems that was actually designed for organizations that deliver continuing education and professional development and that sell continuing education, professional development. So we were among the first to actually integrate with an association management system, which is a very important topic that I'm sure you'll hear about today and in your LMS travels, and to be able to award continuing education credit and do e-commerce and that sort of thing. That was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but learned a lot from that experience and parlayed that eventually into creating Tagoras as a company that's really all about helping organizations that are in the continuing education and professional development business. And we do a lot more than LMS at this point. We're focused a lot on strategy and market assessment, but learning platform selection is still a big part of what we do. And we do a lot of research. We do a lot of selection processes. We're very involved in what's going on out there. So we know sort of the universe of platforms that are a good fit for those sorts of organizations, a number of which are represented here today. And it's great that you're here to take advantage of that. One comment I'll make around just sort of this whole LMS conversation and the process itself before we turn and start talking to the companies who have joined us here is to always remember that it is a process, that going through selection, you have to be thinking about the stages that you're going to move through. And it's fundamentally a decision process. And I always talk about there being three parts of a decision process. There are your objectives. So what are you trying to achieve in making that decision? There are your alternatives. So what are you going to use to try to achieve those objectives? And there are your risks. So what kind of risk are you undertaking with any of the alternatives that you choose? And one thing that I find with any sort of technology selection process, and certainly LMSs are part of this, is that people jump into the alternatives very quickly. And obviously we're going to be looking at some alternatives today, and that's great. But I would encourage everybody here to take whatever you learn about the alternatives today and back up, and to the extent you haven't already, really think hard about the objectives you're trying to achieve by putting a learning management system in place, and take what you learn about alternatives today to inform those objectives and to shape them and to get them really tight and really focused, and make sure that everybody in your organization who needs to know about them knows about them and is bought into them, and that you're all in sort of consensus moving forward. And then to leap over alternatives, which we'll get to in a minute, also make sure you're very clear about any risk that you're undertaking and that you've kind of evaluated those.
Well,
So
and I'd like to interrupt you and ask, if I'm investigating my options, who in my association needs to be part of that conversation? Because I know what my answer is, but I know it's not what I often hear.
Sure. And I'd love for folks on the call too to put in the chat, who you think or who you plan to involve in your organization, who you have been involving in your organization in an LMS selection. I mean, the truth is these days, this has always been true, but I think it's particularly true now. We've seen some people comment in the chat about non-dues revenue and sponsorship revenue and those sorts of things. Your learning platform, your education platform is starting to touch all parts of your organization. That's always really been true, but it's truer than ever now. So you can't have just your education people sitting at the table. Obviously, they need to be there, but chances are, you need your marketing people there, because you've got to be effective about how this is going to fit into your marketing. You need your tech people there. You need your finance people there, usually, because there's that revenue side to this, and how does it fit into your systems and processes. If you offer a credential, you probably need your credentialing people there to see how this interfaces with that. If your meetings people are separate, you probably need them there. So it very much needs to be
your
a cross-functional
C-suite,
team.
because if C-suite is not a champion of this, it's harder to get everything through the culture,
That's true. Somebody, whether the CEO could be the CFO, we see the CFO in a lot of cases sitting there, but somebody at that top level definitely needs to be bought into this and help with making those connections across the organization, getting everybody clear on those objectives, getting everybody to go through this process.
And Eric has just put a question in the chat: who should be driving the search? Well, and I'm going to give the consultant answer to that, which is it depends.
It depends, yeah. I'd say that who we most commonly see driving the search, which I think makes sense as long as they're involving the right people, is going to be a VP of education, a director of education, whoever has that top level decision making authority within the education part of the business. That usually is who it makes sense to be driving it. Again, like Barbara says, though, it depends on sort of how your organization is structured and where education and learning sit, and who interfaces with it.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to pick the person who's the most likely to be the best champion, not based on their title. I see Tom nodding his head.
Yes. And we've definitely seen, particularly with smaller organizations, but even with some larger ones, where the CEO or the executive director is leading the process. We see that more and more. We see boards involved more with the process because they're concerned about, are we going to have the right platform in place to do something that's A, fundamental to our mission, because education usually is so fundamental to an association's mission, and B, has to generate revenue. So those are two very important things that have to happen. So it makes sense for somebody in a C position to potentially take the lead on this.
I think the tricky part is somebody who can see the overall 30,000-foot strategy and where you're going three years from now, but is enough detail minded to not overlook, oh, we needed e-commerce. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and when we talk about objectives too, we always tell organizations to back all the way up to the higher level organizational objectives. I mean, your overall organization's strategic plan, how does education fit within that? And then how does an LMS support whatever the objectives of the education business are within the overall organizational objective? So you have to have that big picture understanding and buy-in around where the organization is going strategically.
And what food are they going to serve while they're asking you all these questions?
That's very important. You need to have good carbs in the room. Cookies work.
Maybe hot sauce at the right time. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, helps to attract the right people to the table if you've got the right food on the table. Well, great. Well, I think we should maybe start talking to all of our providers who have been so gracious to be here and talk about their systems today. So many thanks to Phil and Jessica and Mike and Tom. All very familiar faces to me. I can say, like I said, we make it our business to know the platforms out there that are really focused on working with associations, which is not everybody. I mean, if you go out and do some research on LMSs, you'll find out very quickly there are hundreds. Some people will say thousands of them out there. A very small percentage of those are actually a good fit for associations and actually care about and have taken the time to understand how association business models work, how association culture works. And I can say in favor of all of the companies that are here on the call today, that these are companies that have done that this is their space. So it's a great start. One thing I thought I'd do with each of you, I'm going to encourage by Sandra to do this, and I think she's right, is to ask something that's not so much about LMS or technology, so because we always advocate when we're going through a selection process to find that personality match with the company that you want to work with. You have to understand their personality because it's not just all about the tech. I mean, you're going to be partnered with these people over time. You want to make sure they're people that you know and like and feel good about. So I came up with a question, and I realized, Phil, after I came up with it, that it's kind of you were kind of a ringer for it, so you might have to consider how you answer it. But I was going to ask, if you were in a rock and roll band, what instrument would you play? And Phil, you might want to answer what instrument you would play different from what you already play. I don't know, but I'm gonna ask Mike first to tell us about that.
Keyboards, baby, keyboards.
Keyboards, all right. Have you got the rhythm and blues in you?
Exactly.
Nice. Jessica, how about you?
I think I'd be kind of front Stevie Nicks style with tambourine, just kind of dancing, singing.
The triangle.
Nice, grooving out there with this sort of spiritual feel, maybe. Cool. Tom, how about you?
I would say that I will play the air guitar because I don't know anything about the music instrument, but if air guitar is out there, I can pretend to play. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure you can play some mean air guitar. Definitely. All right. Phil, how about you?
So I'm actually the drummer, right? So you guys probably have heard all the jokes about drummers, right? What was the last thing the drummer said hey, I got a song that I wrote, you know. They always make fun of the drummer because oh, you're just a timekeeper, you're not the musician. But I think I'm with Mike in terms of writing. I think definitely more on the keyboard side. I would love to do.
Nice, nice. Yeah, drummers don't get the respect they
No.
deserve. I mean, the
Look
Beatles
at
wouldn't have been the
Look at
Beatles
Ringo
without
Starr.
Ringo. Yeah, the Stones
Yeah,
without Charlie Watts wouldn't have been the same. So I think the
exactly.
drummers are the bedrock. So cool. Well, thanks so much. I'll admit I'm a guitarist and a singer, so I have this sort of vested interest in music. That's why I ask about that sort of thing. I see Jason put Neil Peart in the chat. Yeah, a Rush without him wouldn't be the same at all. So those drummers rock, so to speak. Fantastic.
Literally, yes.
Yeah, literally. All right. Well, cool. Well, before we head into looking at different systems, and Sandra and Barbara, I'll ask you to kind of keep me on time here to make sure I'm on track with where I need to be. But I did want to ask something, a little bit more LMS-y of the group before we head in to doing that. And so we've got people here who either are looking for a next system. I saw somebody who said they were looking for a next system, very common now because so many organizations have already had their first learning management system, maybe their second, and they've evolved, or they just didn't find the right fit the first time. They're trying to find that next fit. So that's very common. But there are also still organizations who are making the leap for the first time, and we've got some of those too. I saw that in the chat, also very common. So you can take it from either angle here. What mistakes do you see organizations make as they go through a selection and implementation process that you would like to help them enjoy? Or you can take that from the flip side. What do you see the most successful organizations do to make the right choice and to implement successfully? And maybe I'll go back in reverse order, and Phil, ask you to go first on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I would, I come out of the content side of it, so I might be biased, but I always lean a little bit towards that, right? Like, you have to consider your audience and what is the content that they, do they like live events, so more webcast and live video, or is it more on demand just based on the audience? And what is the driving factors around? Is it more we have to do this because we need to earn credits and that's why I'm here? But I would start with content and understand your audience and what they would like to, how that content needs to be delivered, and then go and find the LMS that kind of fits that mode, fits your audience, and fits the content that they're going to want to consume. So
great. So being very clear about the content, and this kind of goes back to objectives too, because one of your objectives is going to be around, what are you trying to achieve with educational outcomes, and what kind of content supports that for your audience, and starting with that as one of your overarching objectives before you move into the alternatives and looking at which system is exactly right. Tom, how about you?
Okay, so I will break into two audience. So if you are looking for a very first learning management system, I will say that you should set your goal just a little bit lower. So instead of saying, hey, I want everything that is possible, just set your goal to what is realistic things I want to accomplish in the first 12 months, right? So instead of saying, hey, I want a full-blown certification program that has this and that, just say, hey, I just want to put up some webinars and some on-demand courses that's going to prove that this online learning is actually going to work, right? So I think if you set reasonable goals as your first learning management system, it's going to be easier to succeed. If you're looking for a new platform that's going to replace your existing platform, I will say that, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? So sometimes you might say, hey, I really don't like my system because X and Y, but you may not realize that your current system actually does A through Z really, really well, that you don't even realize it's not available somewhere else. So I would say that if you're looking for a replacement of your existing LMS, don't just look for another system that do things that you cannot do right now. You also want to say, okay, does it also do things that my current system already do, to make sure that I'm not losing anything while I'm gaining something new. And then in addition, as you find a new learning management system, I would say that's probably because you're growing your portfolio of product. So you probably want to make sure that, do I have the necessary staffing to to support the growth of my learning management system? Because in the beginning, you might just have someone doing it once a day to keep the boat from sinking. But if you're growing, you probably need at least 1 or 2 people to start keeping the entire website running smoothly, right? So I would say that even though the learning management system is fairly mature, everybody have a slight different take on what their education product is better at, and that you just want to make sure that you're fully engaged with that part of your business, and it's not just something you can do on the side. So you need to spend time with it. So that's my feedback.
That's great. I think that staffing part is so important because people tend to not fully account for that when they go through a selection process. I also think it's very true that organizations often don't realize everything that their current learning management system can do. So you need to check in occasionally, get a redemo of whatever system you're using, and make sure you really know what you have and what you may not be using out of what you have. Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say, Tom mentioned obviously set your initial goals, but make sure that you're also thinking about long-term goals as well, because you want to make sure that you're selecting a system that will grow with you. You might not do everything, all the different types of mediums up front, but it might be something that you consider as you grow years from now, as you start to expand into alternate ways of delivering content. I'd also say make sure that you understand the level of effort for any integrations that you're going to be doing with your current technology or AMS or any other systems that you're looking to integrate with. Have those conversations up front in the discovery process when you're selecting a system, not after you've already signed the contract. You want to make sure that you understand exactly what the user flow is going to be, exactly what those points of contact are in the integration. And then I would also say when you're going to go through this process, understand what your minimum viable product is going to be. You might not be able to have everything up online for your go live date. Really set a realistic goal and a realistic timeline as well. We oftentimes get people that are like, we want to be live in a month, and sure, we might be able to support that. But when they get into going through and getting all their content and assets together to transition, that process can take some time. So be realistic about your timeline, and also use that time to clean out your catalog a little bit. You don't have to just transfer everything, especially for those that might be moving platforms. It's a really good time to do some kind of spring cleaning and go through seeing what content's still relevant and things that people are still actively using and engaging with.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't have to take everything with you, most definitely. And I'll emphasize too that you brought up requirements, and Tom said sort of the same thing. Don't try to go for everything. Get those requirements very tight, very focused on what you really need, and that goes back to starting with objectives, and then carving those requirements out of your objectives. And pay attention to that I word in terms of people sitting at the table for integration. You might need your AMS partner there at some point. You might need your email marketing platform there at some point, whatever it is. You're going to need to involve those people in the selection process to make sure they're really ready. I've mentioned process a lot. Barbara mentioned the webinar we're having. I'll put that in the link right now because we're going to be going through our process as part of that webinar if you want to join us for that in a couple of weeks. Mike, what's your perspective?
Well, one of the things I don't think a lot of associations, especially the small to medium-sized associations, they don't consider the administrative overhead of adding an LMS or using an LMS, especially in terms of the support of their members and their learners. It's one of the things that I know in so many situations that we've dealt with is that they never thought about that to begin with and what it's going to take to actually make this thing tick off so that it runs very nicely for everybody. And I think the other thing that a lot of associations don't take into account too is on the content side. Speaking somewhat of what Phil was saying, was the content is the most important piece of any LMS. That and the ease of use of getting to that content. And the problem is, if you're just doing text in a box, don't even bother getting an LMS, because people will take a course one time or maybe twice. They'll never come back to it. It needs
Right.
to be more than just text in a box kind of a thing. Just throwing up a bunch of PDFs just doesn't work anymore. And for the associations, the most important, the most heavy lift in any LMS is putting the content together and getting it delivered correctly, to their membership. It has to be easy to use, easy to understand, and just the navigation needs to be just as smooth as it possibly can be, because people they don't have the time to just bounce through systems that, they got to try to figure out along the way, kind of a thing. And then if the content's not good, it's not bad. And if the navigation isn't good, they're constantly contacting the association, who is ever supporting the system, with all their questions and everything else as to why this isn't working right, or how do I do this, or how do I do that. So it's the admin overhead is just a huge piece that really needs to be considered when putting one of these systems up.
Thanks so much. I believe we are at transition point, so I'm going to
Yeah.
bounce it over to Sandra.
Yeah, but I'm also going to selfishly take a moment to express from like a totally different perspective. I want to admit that I got a little overwhelmed because you are all expressing it takes a lot of work to look for, transition, onboard, and so on and so forth. So if you can help alleviate some of the stress that I'm even feeling, I'm sure maybe some other folks are feeling too, because a lot of folks are with small staff. So is there something that you can help provide, express, that will eliminate a little bit of that overhead for the workload that would happen?
If I could say one thing, I mean, I know about everybody who's here representing companies. Those companies are going to be right there with you. They're going to be helping you along the way. They're going to be doing a lot of this heavy lifting when it comes to the implementation of the system. So lean on them. Take that for all it's worth.
Yeah, one thing I saw that I saw a couple groups do, which I thought was pretty interesting. And you certainly want to have one owner, right? But I've seen people that split that ownership so it's not as burdensome for one person, meaning even the way like who we have to deliver the product to. So they take IT and they own the relationship as far as technology. So then the learning folks, the VP of education, etc., they're more your business owners. So people that split the technology from the business, I've seen that work well, because then you're only focused on your piece of it, and then the education folks can just focus on the delivery of excellent educational programs and etc., and not have to worry so much about the technology. They give that to, if you do have an IT person within your organization. I thought that worked well, where they kind of separate that out a bit.
There has to be a project plan in place on the implementation that just lists out everybody's job role within getting the project going, and that project plan needs to include the milestones, the steps, the dates, the timelines, the goals, all of those things, which can be performed by each individual that's involved with the project. There has to be a solid plan in place. Otherwise, they go out of scope, they go all over the place, everybody's got different ideas, and then you've got a mess, and then it never satisfies anybody. So you do have to, from the onset, you have to have a solid project plan in place.
And hopefully there's someone, I know we have on our team an implementation manager that will help guide through all of that and put that together. So as Jeff said, you are not alone in this process. You're not expected to know all the stuff that we're talking about. Part of the services that you're signing up for, that you get guided along the way, whether it's implementation manager or a customer success manager that's going to be helping with those best practices. So you are not alone.
And I'll also add something that almost sounds silly, but write things down, right? In the sense that if, let's say, you learn how to use the system, but you don't write it down, unless there's a turnover within your team, oftentimes that knowledge walk out of the door. And we actually have seen that happen, where one person is fully aware of how to use the system, and then because they're so good, they find another job, and then next thing you know, the person take over have no idea because nobody wrote anything down. So surprise, documentation is important. So
Definitely.
Totally agree. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, folks. So this is how we're going to move on to our booths, and farmers market has opened. So our colleagues here, our vendors, Jeff, Tom, Phil, Jessica, and Mike will each go to their respective booths. I'm going to stop spotlighting everybody, and they will go to their booths. And everyone here is welcome to choose which booth they'd like to go check out. Everyone's here for another half hour or so. It's totally loose format. I will show you how to navigate on the platform. It's very, very quick. But as our colleagues go over to their booths, I'm going to do a quick share screen so that you can meet whomever you'd like to meet. And we'll sound a bell every 10 minutes just to give you a sense of time. But you're welcome to stay as long as you need to and meet all the folks that you want to meet. All right, so here we go. I'm going to share my screen. When you joined us today, you clicked on your personalized access link. It brought you to the main page, and then you entered the event. Here we are. We're all on the main stage, and you click that join video button for main stage. It launched Zoom. So behind Zoom, or on the second screen, if you've got two, you'll still have this browser page open. This is like your map. Your rooms are located below the main stage. So all of these rooms, which are essentially different booths based on the LMS platforms that are offered today. Just click on the room that you'd like to go to. Click on that name, let the page refresh, then click on join video, and it'll ask you, do you want to leave this Zoom meeting and join another one? And just go follow the prompts and say yes, because essentially all of these rooms have separate Zoom meetings behind that join video button. And that's where you'll find our guests. So please go ahead and feel free to jump to the next room that you'd like to go to. I will be staying here in the main stage for any questions. If you want to talk about something else, if you want to talk about lunch, whatever you'd like to do, but you're welcome to please go have a pre-lunch with all of our vendors and share your information with them. There's a yellow button in each room that says share my info if you'd like to do that. So thank you very much.
See you in the rooms.